everybody. My name is Boaz Feldman. I'm really happy to host all of our friends here, and there will be some more coming after from the coffee break. Host this session for Peter Limberg. It's an honor to have you here at the ON conference at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. I'm a research scholar here, and this conference is kind of the fireworks ending of my fellowship. And so we had a full day of conference yesterday with a number of speakers, and we have a few sessions, which is why we're splitting up into small groups. And I'd just like to share how much we appreciate you, Peter, for coming in today and offering some of your wisdom and interactions so that our folks can benefit from here. And also, if you widen the ways in which some of your powerful teachings can start to integrate in these spaces at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. So a great thank you for joining us and hosting this session today. And I leave it to you now.
Beautiful. Thanks, Boaz. And congrats on the conference. I heard it's going great, and it's an honor to be here. Yeah, welcome everyone at the Stoa as well. It's always great to see some familiar and beautiful faces. So how today's going to work, we're here for 90 minutes in total. So you can come and go as you please. I'll be presenting for about 30 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A. Some people in Harvard will be asking questions. Some people in the Stoa will be asking questions. And then we'll be having a collective inquiry. And I'll explain how that works when we get to that point. Right, so I'm going to share my screen. Boom. Can you see this? All right. What's Stoa Marcus doing at Harvard? He's rocking that Harvard sweater, ready to learn. So yeah, the Stoa is at Harvard right now. And I want to honor the three locations or geographies that are present right now that I'm speaking to. So one is the Stoa. And if you don't know what the Stoa is, it's a mystical place where lots of philosophical and alchemic conversations take place, basically in a Zoom room. And there's about 30 people here right now Zooming in. And we're also streaming live at Harvard, as Boaz says. We're at this unconference right now on the future of education. And also, you might be watching on YouTube and breaking the temporal boundaries right now. These are the three locations that I'm being senseful of when I'm speaking today. And this is the first time that we've been doing a Stoa live at a specific location. I imagine many more will come. So for those of you maybe watching on YouTube and don't know what this conference is, it's called Human Transformation in a Time of a Meta Crisis. That's a one-day conference and one-day unconference on education. And here's a blurb from the website. And if you don't know what the meta crisis is, I recommend checking it out. It's good to have some meta crisis literacy. And I'll read a passage from this blurb. We face a meta crisis, a set of profound, escalating, and interconnected crises: social polarization, ecological breakdown, growing inequality, and a meaning crisis, whose source lie in core views and values at the root of our civilization. It demands an integrated vision of transformation in education systems. So the meta crisis is basically just an ecology of bad stuff that can happen to us collectively. And we can't just focus on one issue. We need to have a meta perspective and focus on all of them, which is quite difficult to do. And the premise of this conference, I believe, is the meta crisis demands new education. And this is a premise I agree with. So right now, I'm going to present a scandalous proposition. It's so scandalous. I can't believe I'm doing this at Harvard, but I'm going to do it. The future of education is podcasts. Yeah, please don't leave for the exits, those in Harvard, but I'm going to stick with this premise for now. The future of education is podcasts. And I'm going to up the ante here, and I'm going to be even more provocative with the following premise. Podcasts are proto-schools. They're proto-schools. And I know I started a podcast in 2018, then I've been doing something like a podcast ever since. So that's around 7 years. And I know from this experience, I learned more from podcasting about life, about myself, about the world than I ever did in formal education. Um, but what really is a podcast? All you need is some equipment, a microphone, you need a streaming service, and you need some smart people. And it's actually very surprising if you just throw up a podcast and you just email people. A lot of people just agree to go on. I was surprised how willing people accept podcasts. And that's all you need is these three ingredients. And what makes podcasts wonderful and maybe the future of education is it's self-directed learning. It's totally self-directed learning. And I'm not. Don't ask me how to pronounce this word, but that's the official educational term for self-directed learning. And it's learning in public. There's this ethos that this forget his name, but he was a blogger. He says, the new thing is learning in public, and all you have to be is like 2 chapters ahead of someone in a topic that there's a collective interest in, and there's a certain authenticity in that is attractive to learn from, rather than someone who's an expert at that subject. And so, podcasts not only self-directed, but it's about learning in public. And there's a DIY expertise that comes. If you really niche in your podcast, whether it's like Roman history and you interview all these experts, then you're going to get some expertise in it yourself. But since we're at Harvard, I'm going to put the quotations around experts so I don't get in trouble here. And unschooling. Podcasts can also be a form of unschooling because we learn a lot of stuff in school, not just content or propositions, but how to be in the world that is not of service to us. And so podcasts can be a source of unlearning all the bad things that we did learn. And it's free and it's fun. So how could you go wrong? So yeah, maybe podcasts are the future of education. Maybe they are proto schools. Maybe all you need is just to get a whiskey and a cigar and be in top of the podcasting kingdom like Joe Rogan. And that's all we need. But not all podcasts are made equal, and I would say there's more bad to podcasting than there's good at this point. We have echo chambers, we have creator burnout, audience capture. There's no quality control. There's a lack of embodiment. There's monetization pressures, which is probably the source of all these issues. Intellectual shallowness, and then anyone can just make things up. The misinformation, disinformation problem. So I personally don't listen to podcasts anymore. I don't like listening to the talking heads on 2x mode. And I think its meaning is expiry date podcast. So you know what? I take that back. Harvard, I apologize. Podcasts are not proto schools. They're not proto schools. But there is something here with all these things that I listed. People are learning. People are educating themselves with podcasts. And there's something that we can call podcast 2.0, which happened around 2020. Some people call them the dark forests of the internet. I like to call it a communal podcast. And as I mentioned, I had a podcast from 2018 to 2019, and then I was a first mover, you can say, in the podcast 2.0 world. And what is podcast 2.0? Well, it's the same thing with the podcast, the first version of the podcast. There's equipment, there's a streaming service, there's a smart person, but there's this. There's people in a Zoom room interacting live. And I would say the major shift between podcast 1.0 and podcast 2.0 is community over audience. It's no longer about cultivating an audience. It's about having a community. I put community in brackets because I have a problematic relationship with that word, but the spirit of it is true. Going back, this is from a clip from the Stoa, maybe the end of the Stoa party a couple of years ago. And the Stoa was a beautiful place. It's been started in 2020 and it's been around for 5 years now, or 6 years. And basically, a lot of sessions, we interviewed people, really intelligent people on a subject, often about the meta crisis. And while people are in a Zoom room, and then instead of me just interviewing the person, there's a Q&A, and then the recording button stops, and that's where the real magic happens. That's where conversations happen. And then there's about 1,000 sessions, and I think I have a slide for this. Yeah, we have about 1,000 sessions, and a lot of them were unrecorded. We had big names like Noam Chomsky, Robin Dunbar from Dunbar Number, the late James Carse from Finite Infinite Games. And there was a point where people were dubbing it the Burning Man of the internet. There's about 40 sessions a week. And if there was a theme, it's pretty broad, the Stoa. If there's a theme, it would probably be practical philosophy and sense making about the meta crisis. And I wasn't an expert. I was kind of a student, really, but I gave the term steward to myself. I didn't like the word organizer, so I just used the word steward, and I like the meaning of that word because you don't really own it, but you are responsible for it. And so, yes, Stoa, a proto school? Maybe. Uh, or is it an inverse school? I like this framing of an inverse school. And what inspired it was this book, The Ignorant Schoolmaster, Five Lessons in Intellectual Emancipation by Jacques Rancière. And Rancière talked about this guy, Joseph Jacotot, a 19th century French educator who was exiled in Belgium, and he was tasked to teach students French who only spoke Flemish, a language he didn't know at all. And what he did, he just gave them a bilingual book, and he said, "Go learn it," and they did. And this kind of blew him away. Like, wow, okay. So the teacher does not have to be more knowledgeable than his students in order to teach them something. And he argued that traditional education can lead to intellectual stultification, where students become independent or dependent on the teacher and it undermines their own intelligence. It's like knowledge is always out there in someone else's mind who's smarter than them, wiser than them. They have more knowledge in the world. And what that does, it creates an embodied sense of distrust in their own innate intelligence, their own innate wisdom. And what he recommends is an intellectual emancipation, new forms of teaching where the teacher creates conditions for students to trust their natural intelligence. Um, and really, the ignorant schoolmaster is kind of like an ignorant steward. He's not really teaching anything. He's stewarding the collective intelligence to figure something out. Um, and so this is like the traditional education. The teacher has some kind of epistemic authority, teaches it, and goes into the minds of the students. But in this inverse uh, way of teaching, this ignorant schoolmaster way of teaching, he creates the conditions, and then some idea, insight, knowledge emerges, and it actually teaches the teacher. And I know if I was some ignorant steward at the Stoa, I learned so much, way more from the participants at the actual Stoa than any guest that actually came in. So, yeah, maybe the Stoa is an inverse school. I kind of like this framing. I never really knew what the Stoa was for the first 4 years, but something about it being an inverse school sounds kind of cool. And if there's an inverse school, then there has to be inverse courses. And so that was what I was doing or prototyping last year. I did two inverse courses. One was called The Entity Pill, and the other was called Internet Real Life. And so I will briefly talk about each of these, and you might have to buckle up for this one. Um, so the entity pill, yeah, metaphysical, ontological shock ahead. So, again, leave for the exits if you're not ready for this. But there's a term called disincarnate entities that's popular in shamanic and psychedelic circles. Basically, a lot of people these days are experiencing strange things that a materialist lens is not giving a satisfying explanation. So basically, unseen entities that feel harmful. Um, and I've had personally a lot of experiences with this stuff, very unpleasant, and I know a lot of other people at the Stoa did as well. And so I felt called to do an inverse course on this because I didn't know anyone who was really an expertise on it. And if someone was talking about it, they came from a very certain perspective that just wasn't landing for me. And one thing about the Stoa, we have a transperspectival lens. We just open up for all these different perspectives, whether they're Stoic, they're Buddhist, they're Christian, political right, political left, and uh, and we talk to these people. And so we talked to about this disincarnate entities. We had someone from Internal Family Systems. It's a popular therapist. They actually have practices like mini exorcisms on these things, and they call it unattached burdens, Post-rationalists call it intersubjective parasites, and of course, Christians call it demons. I was kind of hesitant too. Like, am I really going to talk about demons at Harvard? Peter, are you going to do this? Of course I'm going to do this. Anytime I have that hesitation, I have to do the opposite. And yeah, like many people are having these encounters, and it was a metaphysically diverse group. There was people who were skeptical on it, people who thought it was just a psychological phenomenon, and people thought the ontological status was real, which is the majority of people throughout human history, and you can argue throughout the world today. Uh, and it was a wonderful series. And it not only it gave it like and theoretically and enriched me in this understanding, but also gave me practice. And the practice is like a spoiler alert, it's love. But this new skill, this transperspectival demonology emerged from this encounter, something that I'll be investigating further. The other inverse course, which just ended on Friday, was called Internet Real Life. And it was tasked to discover a new philosophy of the internet. And we invited the who's who of intellectual hipsters, like kind of artist types who were writing and theorizing about the internet. And we had conversations with them and collective dialogues that followed it. And this series addressed the following dialectic. So, thesis, internet optimism. The internet will save us. And the early internet utopian philosophers and the young Zuck, and when Facebook first came out, this is in the 1990s and early 2000s, like, wow, the internet's amazing. And it is amazing. We can feel its potential. It transformed our lives, and it will continue to do so. But in recent years, this antithesis emerged, this internet pessimism. The internet will destroy us. And this is mid 2010s, the early 2020s. And this is the culture war, the censorship, all the harassment, just all the nastiness that the internet has caused. And there's just all these philosophers, all these intellectuals with hot takes about, internet is bad. And a common uh, uh, um, a common thing that amongst participants of this course, they said that they used to escape the real life to go on the internet. Now they're escaping the internet to go back to the real life. And this is a challenge, right? Like, because it's, that they originally escaped it for a reason. Um, and so we put this philosophical North Star out there. Okay, there has to be a synthesis to this dialectic. There has to be an internet realism. How can we honor the potential of the internet while recognizing its dangers? So how, in essence, can we have a wise relationship with the internet? So instead of having a knowledge and skill form for a new philosophy was forming from this series. And the series was just wonderful. And both series are up on the YouTube channel if you feel called to watch the recorded portions of it. So, and then there's other inverse courses that I'm looking to do. One on communal literacy. How can we, it's not just get social skills or relationship skills, how can we get communal skills? And, one issue part communal skills is the sociopath problem, which is just, I'm using it as a catch-all for problematic individuals that disrupt social fields. And so that's another course I'd like to do. And I was working at this startup in the summer as the philosopher in residence, and we were thinking about a chief philosophy officer role. Like, what would a chief philosophy officer role look in an organization? And I don't think anyone really knows. And so something about, the complexity of the meta crisis, the unknowingness of what is going to unfold in the next few years with AI. It's almost like we have to create these skill constructs, throw it out there, and then kind of fill it with theory and practice. And there's something about the inverse course that feels equipped to do so. So, what are inverse course good for? Like I just said, it's like new knowledge and skill is needed. You throw out a skill construct out there, and let's see if it has any attractive features that can like be of service. And a focus on wisdom over intelligence. This is a big one. It's not about being, smarter. It's about being less foolish, and how can we navigate the complexity that we're in with humility. And it's uh, it's something where there is no experts currently. There is no experts on transperspectival demonology. There's no experts on chief philosophy officer. It doesn't exist yet. And it reminds me of that Back to the Future, scene where there's like roads. There are no roads. It's like, experts where we're going. There are no experts. So is the inverse course the future of education? I don't know. I think that's the proper answer. I don't know. But maybe someone in the room does, and maybe the collective wisdom here might have some sense of it. And so that's what we're going to do now. And if you're watching, my friends watching on YouTube, well, we might part ways here. So Stoa Marcus, we'll say goodbye. But if you're interested in what the Stoa is and what it's becoming, I'm gonna create this new website, which you can find on the link of the show notes, and you're welcome to come visit us. So